Next week, we're going to do Baimer in the beginning of the class. Like Baimer is Wednesday night, right?
Right, yeah, Wednesday.
So the night before. Maybe if I have time, maybe we'll prepare some a Rashbi menu. We'll do Lag Baimer, and then we'll do all different Rashbi halachas. There's a whole book called Mides the Rashbi. It's like 500 pages. It allocates all of the Memari Chazal of Rishon Bayachai from everywhere. Medrash, Shas.
Wow.
Very interesting. Well, I was not going to go through the whole thing. I'll see if I can take something out of there. Okay, so on our menu for tonight, what I want to do tonight is I want to finish chapter 3, both inside and outside, Siman Gimel, which for those who were here last week, we continued that last week for the remainder of the class after we did Sfir Saimer. And so hopefully tonight we'll be able to finish it. It is not going to cover everything relating to the subject of the bathroom, which is the topic of Siman Gimel, being that there are many other halachas of bathroom related that are scattered in other simanim of Shulchan Aruch. And when we get to that, we'll do them. But I will mention what are the topics we will be omitting until later. Before we start, I'll just bring up an interesting shaila that I found some precedent for this week. And the shaila is a very tough shaila for anyone to receive, to be able to answer, especially on the spot due to the sensitivity. It's a shaila that I received a number of years ago where someone called me from the hospital and they said the following, that the doctors, his wife was sick with the Yenemachla, and the doctors say that she has, within the hour to live. And he wants to know if he can hold her hand. His wife had not gone to mikvah since the later stages of the illness, and therefore she was impure. So he called me up, can I hold my wife's hand before she passes on? And that's like throwing a cannon at someone, that question. You say no, how can you say no? You say yes, how can you say yes? You're getting into trouble with somebody, what you're doing. So I'll just give a little back on this. I'll mention the interesting precedent I found regarding this week. So what's recorded in the Yeridea in chapter 195, Kuf Tzadikei, the laws of Archakis of Niddah, is that while the general law is that the Isser of Gili Arayas, which was Parshas Achimais last week in Chutz La'aretz, right? The Isser of Gili Arayas, 2 weeks ago, Gili Arayas, that a person is not allowed to have relations with a list of forbidden women, and he can't even do anything that's what's called a bizraya, which is any closeness to them, which would include touching, of course. That's only when the touch is for the sake of affection. It's for the sake of erotic purposes. But if it's a platonic, baseless feeling, touch, then it's mutter. It's not, and that's the whole Yesoid, foundation of the heter, that it's mutter for a male doctor to attend to a female patient. Because since he's busy with his work, he therefore is not doing it for the sake of anything forbidden. Now, I'm not saying all doctors are holy and don't have their minds wandering, and if they do, then they have to stop their profession and working with female patients. But the general rule of halacha allows a doctor to have female patients, even if it's in the most intimate areas of touch, such as a gynecologist. This is the Shach in 195. So this sounds like really going my way, right? So then, of course, the husband can hold his wife's hand when she's about to pass away. This is nothing about that. This is about, the most sensitive moment of the couple's life or anyone's life. The person's spouse is passing on. The problem is that this is only regarding other relatives. A person's wife, the Chamim were super machmir, super stringent, and they said that when a person's wife is impure, he's not allowed to have even unaffectionate touch. Even touch which isn't for the purpose of affection, even a tap of the shoulder, is forbidden. And that's why, according to halacha, it's less problematic for a man to sit next to a random woman on the bus than for him to sit next to his wife when she's in a state of niddah. Because a random woman, if I accidentally touch her, it's not a problem. My wife, I'm not allowed to touch her at all, even unintentionally, during the niddah period. So that's clear. So obviously holding hands in general is always forbidden. Now the question is there any room, is there any leniency at a time like this? And I was not able to uncover anything at all, because there is no literature that discusses such a heter. That's the halacha. It's forbidden, and there's no exception given. The hour before someone passes away, we rescind the restrictions. Now, if the Chacham did apply such a thing, it would make sense. I wouldn't argue on it, but we don't have such a precedent. Right? So, in this situation, I spoke to an elderly Rav, and what he advised me, he as well wasn't keen of the question, and he advised me to tell them, listen, you have now the ability to sanctify God's name with the last moments of her life, and it would be better to abstain and not to order. And that was the answer I gave. So what's the precedent? So this week I was reading a memoir written by Glukil of what's the city name? I forgot the name of the city. It's in Poland or Germany. Glukil was a Jewish businesswoman who lived in the 1600s. I think she was born. What was the name of the city?
I don't know the city.
Hamlik.
I know the place in the
So Glukil. So she has a diary that she wrote. A very interesting diary. It's like from a historical perspective, it's a treasure for history because it's a first-hand account of many of the events of the Chmielnicki massacres, Tachtat, and many different Shabtai Tzvi she lived through. So it's a first-hand account of a lot of these interesting major episodes that happened in Jewish history, as opposed to hearing a historian who wrote it. You're hearing from the actual person who went through it. And but I found amazing. She writes a diary. In one of her diaries, she wrote something absolutely amazing. She went through this exact case. Her husband, she had 10 children. She had 12 children, 12 kids, and her husband, who ran the business, was fatally ill and was about to pass away. And his wife, so she writes that she said to her husband, "Let me hold your hand. Let's hold hands at least for when your neshama goes." She was impure at the time. She was in need at the time. And she said that her husband looked at her and said, "Glukil, let us stand strong at this last moment of my life, that we'll be able to overcome this challenge, and we'll be able to follow Jewish law." And that's indeed what happened. They didn't hold hands. They abstained. And he passed away. She took over the business. She took over everything. But this was the same exact scenario that I saw repeated over here. So it's very interesting to read this.
Could you have had the option to say that you didn't want to answer?
I could have said. I could always say that any time.
Yes.
But if someone asks you a shaila and you know the answer according to halacha, you have an obligation to answer.
Yeah.
If they'll do it.
If
If they'll do it.
Even if they won't do it, I can't. If somebody's asking me, I have to assume they'll do it. I can't assume they're not going to listen to me. Otherwise, they would have just done it. They would have just done it to begin with. Obviously the person. I agree with you. There's a lot of people, and I get this all the time, who call up the Rav to be their what I would call their conscience lawyer, to ease their conscience, not meaning say what they want to hear, and get on board the train with them. And when these people start arguing, I tell them, listen, I'm not your rabbinical advisor. You calling me as a Rav. This is the psak. You don't like it, go Rav Hapa. What do you want me to do for you? When you don't like the psak, this is the psak. I don't have time to go through all the reasons and delineations and background and sources. That's what you learn in rabbinics. Okay, in any event, so let's get to our subject. Okay, I don't know what happened to chapter 3 here. Maybe it's here. Let's see. No, the truth is I have it over here. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to do this like this. I'm going to read through the whole chapter quickly. Okay, so we do the whole thing. I'm going to translate, and then we're going to go do whatever we didn't yet do inside. We're going to go through all the subjects inside. All right, so we're going to begin from the beginning. Siman Gimel. On August Bais Kisei, the directives to be followed in the bathroom, not to get confused with Bais HaKnesses, right? Obviously, Bais HaKisei, even though the abbreviations are the same, Ubay Yud Zayin Seifim. Is 17 halachas. Number 1, this we already discussed in our previous classes before Pesach. The Mechaber writes, Alte likewise records in Shulchan Aruch, when you enter into a bathroom, you should say this statement of, angels, please relax, be patient, I'll be back soon. And today we no longer say it because who are we to have the arrogance to assume that we have angels escorting us that need to wait for us, as I already said from I think it was from Ta'umim, who lived, it was the Rabbi Yerushalayim in the 1900s, that he said that we today also have angels. The difference is back then they were like honorable angels. Today they are like the guards in the jail, so they're not running away from you. They're guarding you to make sure you don't run away. So you don't have to worry. So we don't say it. Base. This we discussed in length. The person is to be modest even when he's in the bathroom. It shouldn't be a free-for-all, and therefore he has to cover as much of his body as possible. In Sifdal, we'll go into the exact amount. What's the problem? Right, we discussed this, that two people cannot be in the bathroom at the same time. There has to be privacy, even for children. Every child should be alone in the bathroom. Bathroom is not a place of public discussion. And so therefore it has to be private. And number two, no talking. We discussed this in length as well. The door has to be closed. All this is due to the laws of tznius, but spiritually and kabbalistically, the meaning of it is tznius, modesty, to prevent yanika, nurture from the klippas. As anytime we take what this event, which is meant to be something very private and modest and discreet, and make it into the open, that's like throwing fuel into the Rishus Harabim, into the public area, which is the area of the klippas for them to nurture from. Gimel. Right now, we can also think about it, right? What's attracted to excrement? What's attracted to feces, to dung? Flies, bugs, insects, all these nasty things. And so we see that it's the klippas that really are attracted to this. They get yanika from this, physically and spiritually. That's why it has to be done in the most private and modest method. Gimel in Ratzon l'shashash b'hitabas b'tzoro b'kisim l'tech kavi mash kan v'sheishu l'mash ach sheishu l'dekosh l'kshafim. Okay, this halacha is it's not really relevant today. It's quite graphic. It's basically saying that a person shouldn't try to engage his bowels using something that can cause a tear in his skin. Dalid lo yigala atzmai kim la'achorav. This we went through. We summarized this before Pesach. The exact amount that should be revealed. So in the Gemara and in the Shulchan Aruch and the Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, it gives actually an exact amount of 8 centimeters, like 1/10 8 centimeters. But we said basically today, bottom line is that not more than necessary. The person can reveal himself as much as necessary, but not more than necessary. And that's the idea that's learned from Sif Dalit. Sif Hey, if a person is going to the bathroom in an open field, this is talking about a bowel movement as opposed to urination, which was at the end of this halacha. Then we discussed this last week in length, that in the end of the class, that a person cannot face east or west. He has to face north and south, not east or west. Unless he's facing Yerushalayim, which was said, in which case even facing, if you're north of Yerushalayim like us, then even facing north is us, or no, facing north. You can't put the back towards Jerusalem. The backside can't be towards Jerusalem. Right? It's a pasuk in Navi. It says that they bowed away from Yerushalayim. They were clothed, but they were bowing by the temple towards a certain area, and they basically, their backsides was pointed towards the Heichel, and that was like a terrible sacrilege that was considered. So it's talking about bathrooms. So someone north of Jerusalem can't do west, can't do east, only facing Jerusalem. Yes?
That's good.
Okay. But the rest of the world, and again, this is only in the open. In a bathroom, we said it's not a problem, but we did mention a few times that the Alte Rebbe holds is that initially the architects should build the bathroom in a direction that it doesn't face east, west, or south and north of Jerusalem, depending on where it is in the globe. Sifra, we did last week. I'm sorry, I skipped a little bit of Sifra. Okay, that's what I skipped. This is all talking about bowel movement, excrement, but urination is permitted in any direction. These halachas don't apply. So, as I mentioned before, in the army, when we did our, miftza'im, in the desert, everyone went to the bathroom in the desert. No, there's no walled structures. There's no privacy. The privacy is go far away, as it says here. But regarding urination, it makes no difference. You don't have to go far away, and you don't have to face any direction. This we discussed last week, that it is forbidden to sleep if one's wife is with him, meaning to engage in intimacy in a position of east to west or west to east. You're not allowed to face the Shekhinah. The same way a person can have a balcony facing the Shekhinah, so too you can. This is not talking about intimacy, but it's talking about before that his wife is, let's say, there's no intimacy, but they're together in the same bed, so it's forbidden to be facing east to west. We mentioned last week with Alte, who brings the Zohar, which has the opposite. You should specifically face east to west and not north to south. And we said the final ruling of the Alte and the final halacha is that the chatchila should be arranged north to south, not east to west. But if it's too difficult to arrange it physically in the room is shaped in a way that doesn't allow the beds to fit in that way, then you can rely on the Zohar and do from east to west. That's what we concluded last week. And if the wife isn't there, let's say a single person or a person whose wife went away, then you have the luxury of being able to switch your beds until she comes back to face east to west. So you can try. The special luxuries when the wife leaves. Okay, or the husband leaves, she can also. Zayin. Hamatil mayim and atzeifim v'lefnim. Pirsh mok shechon lirs misham harabai shom v'halin chon lirs le'ishav panu klape ha'kodesh. So it says that let's say someone is by Harazesim and they need to go and there's no bathroom there, meaning there's no structured bathroom there. So in such a situation, since you're facing the Temple Mount, you have to make sure that you're not facing towards the Kodesh. Even if a person is urinating, yes, urinate to a different direction, not facing the Kodesh. Hopefully this doesn't happen. Ches. As far as I know, there actually aren't mobile bathrooms in Har Zaysim. I remember one time we went with the army, we went on a tour over there and people needed to use the restroom. Non-religious people, non-religious soldiers, and they had to go in the church. That big church, the gold dome. You know what I'm talking about, right to the edge of Har Zaysim. Before all the Quran. It's like to the side of the Quran. So anyways, obviously it's completely forbidden to enter the church, even if you need to go to the bathroom, and better go to the bathroom, you can pick a nice Arab grave to go inside of a church. That's all graves. What are you going to do in a Jewish grave? No choice there. This we mentioned last week regarding privacy in terms of distancing himself in the open, that a person should not go to the bathroom, this talking about bowel movement, in an area that he can be seen, and rather he has to distance himself to a faraway area that people cannot see him. But here in the beginning it says that if there's a fence or a wall, then that wall is good enough. You can just do your needs by the wall, which is interesting because this was a takana of Yeshua ben Nun. Yeshua ben Nun made a takana. We just read it recently in Rambam last week. Yeshua ben Nun made a takana. He made 10 takanas in Eretz Yisrael, which are things that would normally be understood as trespassing or stealing, invasion of privacy. And he passed 10 laws to permit these type of invasions of privacy for benefits of the public. And one of them was that, today we look at it as very strange and disgusting, but we have to understand there were no mobile bathrooms or bathrooms in homes back in the day. So people had to do their needs in the field. So he said that you're allowed to do it next to a wall, even if it's the wall of somebody's house, and he can't protest you. It was one of the cons.
Covering it afterwards.
He doesn't, well, I guess mention the but he doesn't mention anything about that. The idea of covering it that's written in the Torah, according to most Rishonim, and that's what we rule, it's only regarding in battle, by a Milchamas mitzvah, that the soldiers have to carry with them a peg, and that was, today it's not halacha. There are some soldiers that are machmir and do that today, but it's not an actual chiyuv. Like this whole chapter doesn't bring that. And that's how we know it didn't hold as a chiyuv to do that. Not even, but obviously menschlichkeit, it makes sense. Person shouldn't defecate very quickly. He should do it slowly in order so it doesn't tear any of the skin in that area. We did this last week. We said a person is forbidden from using his right hand to clean himself after using the restroom, and we clarified that A, this is referring to a bowel movement, B, this is referring to, as the Alte Rebbe holds, not other Poskim, but the Alte Rebbe holds, and most Poskim can agree with him, that's referring to a person who doesn't have toilet paper. Well, a person who has toilet paper can use any hand he wants. He said the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch argues, we discussed this last week, and holds that even with toilet paper you can't use your right hand, as that's the hand that's used for tefillin, meaning to wrap the tefillin. So a lefty would be the opposite. He wouldn't use his left hand. One thing's clear, everybody agrees that if there is no toilet paper, it's obviously forbidden to use the right hand. And Alte Rebbe also added the middle finger is usher to be used of the left hand because that's where you actually wrap the straps on. And this would apply also in the shower, even when a person is not going to the bathroom, just cleaning himself in the shower, he would be restricted from using his right hand or middle finger in that area. Okay, Sif Yud Gimel. Again, we're going quickly just to give verbatim what it says here. I know there's a lot being left out. Most of this we did already, but whatever we didn't do, we're going to now do right afterwards inside. So Sif Yud Gimel, lo yashtin mu'um penitzitun etazan al raglov in lo sheyamli b'makim gavoy sheyashtin seich hafet yichayach. So this is something very interesting, a halacha that's kind of hard to come to terms with today. Just because the gossip of society has changed, our level of gossip or our topics of gossip have gone to other things. But back in the day, it seemed like it was a very, very taboo thing for someone to walk around with spots of liquid on his trousers, on his legs. And the reason for that is people, this is the basis of this halacha. The halacha with the halacha, what I just read is that a person is not allowed to stand when he urinates because of the drops that will spritz. I know that's not an English word, but whatever. It's a better word that will spritz. Spread? Spray. Okay, spray. That will spray onto his pants, and people will see this, that it's sprayed onto his pants. So therefore, now what's wrong with that? That's what I'll mention in a second, the gossip part. So therefore, what does Mechaber say? So therefore, he has to stand in an area where he's very distant from where it's going to be landing, the stream of urine, or he does it into a soft area that is not going to bounce back. Which basically would mean that, before we go into the details of this halacha, that obviously using a toilet with water inside fulfills this completely, because it absorbs it. So what is the issue exactly? Who cares? I mean, I understand from hygienic purposes, or maybe from purposes of just decency in society, don't urinate in a way that's going to get on your clothing. People are going to say, hey, you got all these spots on you. What is that from? I have to make up a whole story. Oh, my can of Coke, spilled. I didn't know they sell Coke here. So, but that's not the reason. The reason is the following: is that basically people assume that a person who had erectile dysfunction was unable to have a proper stream of urine. And because of that, he didn't urinate properly, and that's why it's falling onto his clothing. Now, this goes really weird, because it didn't stop at this gossip, that, this person may have some erectile dysfunction, but furthermore, his children are probably not that means, and for his children are mamzerim. Now, I agree with you. I have the same question. Who on earth has the time to concoct such a story over some drops of liquid on someone's pants, for heaven's sake? But it could be, even back then, people weren't so indulged in this type of gossip, but it's just that the Chama wanted to distance it in such a way. And may I mention is that with all the conspiracy theorists out there, and I'm sure the Chama had the visionary to see this, people would come up with all these crazy conspiracy theories. That must be that this guy, his children are Mosaic. So the Chama wanted to distance this completely, and therefore that's what the Gezeira they made, that a person cannot urinate in an area, and this halach applies even till today, even though I think From a polls standing, 99% of people would not even have the brain to think of this whole calculation. And chashad. Well, this is halacha. So what this would mean, if a person has to urinate in an open area, he shouldn't urinate on the street, for example. He should go to an area with grass. He should go to an area with sand, with mud, not on the actual street, which is applicable on Shabbos. On Shabbos, a person's walking and doesn't have where to go. According to halacha, we mentioned this last week. We just mentioned this before in the Mechaber. You don't, for urination, a person doesn't have to look for a private area, only for bowel. Urination, person, according to halacha, is supposed to go wherever he's able to. And I'm not sure. I always wondered if there's secular laws that protect that. Like, can someone get arrested on the side of the highway for going to the bathroom? I'm not sure. I don't know how this works. Not everybody does it, but I don't know what the laws are regarding that. But definitely in halacha, it is mandated, not just permitted. It's actually mandated. The person's not allowed to hold himself in. That's the last halacha we're going to discuss later on. He's not allowed to hold in his urine, especially a man. So the point is that a person that would, so a person, let's say on Shabbos, you're walking around, you have to go, there's an advantage of going on a flat surface, like a concrete, etc., because you don't end up watering plants. According to some Poskim, there's an issue of watering plants with urine. However, halacha l'maaseh, we ruled there isn't. So if it's either doing in an area that's going to cause the splashing, or in an area with plants, better to do it in an area with plants and not transgress this halacha.
What about doing on snow?
Well, that's a different question on Shabbos. So,
No, Shabbos in general.
in general, what's wrong with going urinating on
Shabbos,
snow?
there is a question.
If you couldn't urinate on snow, what people in Liberia do, they would never go to the bathroom.
And Shabbos?
On Shabbos is mutter min adin, but if you're able to find a spot without snow, then do that. Find a spot without snow. But if let's say you're walking 15 minutes and that's all there is there's snow, then no, you shouldn't hold it in, and the person should go. Okay, the next halacha Yadalid, is as follows. Halacha Yadalid goes into restrictions applicable to men regarding how they can hold their aver, their limb, while they are urinating. And there are certain restrictions regarding this. So let's see. Yizar shalayechaz ba'ama. In halacha, there's a few different ways of terminologies for the penis, the aver that's used to urinate with, and then one that's mainly used is amma. Yeah, it's one of them. Sometimes they just use aver, which means limb. It's a more of a refined, modest term, but everyone knows what we're talking about in the context. And another place uses the word amma, and in other places an amma can mean other things as well. So it doesn't always mean that. Okay, but in this context, this is referring to. So, first, to be careful not to hold on to his aver while he is urinating, with exception to the area of the crown and below. This means the crown area where the foreskin covers it is now removed. So that crown area, that can be touched, because that is not as sensitive to touch as is the lower part or the upper part. And the Mechaber says the reason for this is because a person who touches himself unnecessarily, it can lead to erection, which can lead to spilling of seed in vain. And we'll see this from the Alte Rebbe afterwards. The one exception to this is a person who is married, and we'll learn that there's still some restrictions even on a married person from the Alte Rebbe when we go inside. And it's an act of piety for even a married person to be aware of this. Okay, so there's a lot of details here we still have to clarify. When we get inside, we'll do it. There is no prohibition for a person to have contact with his testicles in order to help him and assist him to urinate. So that is mutter. That is more mutter than touching the aver, which, as we said before, is forbidden. Except unless you're married, under the condition that we'll clarify soon. Tazayin, saying the whole permission, even for a married man, is only to simply touch it for the sake of urinating, but he's not allowed to have any further contact with that area. This is the last halacha. One who delays his needs transgresses the prohibition of do not Tashaksu, do not make yourselves repulsive. Do not abominate yourselves. Okay, so 17, a lot of different halachas here. Some of them we already did inside. We're going to now go into the book, which is from the Alte Rebbe and other Poskim, to clarify all these points. Okay, so one issue that was not discussed in the Shulchan Aruch of the Mechaber, but is discussed in the Alte Rebbe Shulchan Aruch in both the first and second version and in the Siddur, is regarding the level of cleanliness that's demanded after a person uses the bathroom. So the halacha is as follows. It is forbidden for a person, this is by the way whether male or female, this applies to men and women, it's forbidden for them to learn or pray if there's any amount of excrement which remains by the area of one's opening. So that means if a person doesn't properly wipe himself, there is an Isser Minatayra. There's an Isser Minatayra, right? There's an Isser Minatayra to daven and learn near, it says, Machanecha Kodesh, the encampment of God. When we learn in daven, it has to be holy, and that means there can't be any excrement there. And so therefore, it's not cleaned properly. It is usher to learn or daven until it is cleaned. And this applies even if it's covered with clothing, meaning obviously the person has pants on or the woman has a skirt on, so it's covered. It is still usher to daven and learn if it's not properly cleaned. I once had a Baal Tshuva come over to me, and he was very, very worried because he says that he just recently learned this halacha, and he wasn't careful about cleaning himself properly to the extent that we're going to learn the halacha says you need to, and he's now afraid maybe his bris, maybe he didn't even have a bris. Maybe when he got his bris, he wasn't properly cleaned. Maybe he has to have a new bris. Literally, this was the question I got. So I'm like, hold your horses, relax. And basically what I told him was that for sure your bris is okay. Number one, we don't assume bad. Now you know the proper way, but it doesn't mean that we assume that things were bad beforehand. And number two, mitzvahs are different than Torah and davening. Torah and davening is not mitzvahs. According to some Poskim, according to halacha, basically, there's no isser of doing a mitzvah in a bathroom. The isser is only, so I'm allowed to get stuck in the bathroom, for example. This is only in learning Torah and davening in a bathroom. There's no isser of doing a mitzvah in a bathroom. A bris milah is a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah. I'll tell you another mitzvah they do in a very dirty area. It's called shechita. Yeah, it's brought in Poskim. What to do about the bracha? The shlachta stinks. What do? You say the bracha outside. You take a chicken with you, one chicken to the outside. You shecht one chicken with the bracha. You have in mind everybody else, but you can't say the bracha. About how? So you're doing the mitzvah of shechita in a bathroom, a place that's in the tunaf. The answer is that there's no contradiction between mitzvahs and dirty places, but simply between davening and learning in dirty places. Which I know I have the story of the Melech Lezhinsk and his brother, Reb Zusha, that contradict what I'm saying because they didn't put on tefillin because there was a bucket there. Or according to what I'm saying now, they could have put on tefillin. They just couldn't daven, but put on tefillin they could have done. Okay, so I'll have the story contradict this statement. Obviously, the chatchila, this shouldn't be done, but if push comes to shove, then it's mutter. Okay, so to what extent? So the Alte Rebbe continues in the Siddur and in the Shulchan Aruch, says the following. The wording, this is a translation of the wording there. It is only forbidden if the remaining excrement can be seen by others when one is in a crouching position, hence widening the opening. If, however, it is not visible at all when it's in this position, then it is permitted to learn and pray. Basically, we have a Messiah from, I'm just going to make sure it's from the Tzanzarav. I believe this is from the Tzanzarav. Just clarify that. Okay, no, this is I'm confusing with something else. This is straight up from the Alte Rebbe. The Alte Rebbe writes that bottom line is, how does a person tell? It's very simple. If there's no longer any remnants of coloring on the toilet paper, or what he's using to clean himself, that's a sign that it's good enough, and you don't have to go any further than that. So That's how a person knows that he is clean from a halachic perspective. The Divrei Chaim, so this is what I want to mention from the Tzanzer Rav. The Divrei Chaim writes, based on the Gemara on Shabbos, that in worst case scenario, you only have to clean yourself 3 times maximum. If there's still remaining after 3 times, he says you did your job. 3 times is a chazaka, but that's an interesting chiddush from him. But basically, the Alte says that you have to continue cleaning until there's no more remnant on the paper, and then that is fine. The Alte concludes, and this is halacha l'maisa, with and this is halacha l'maisa as you see in many public toilets, especially in shuls and bati medrash, that in addition it is a midas chasidus for one to not suffice with just wiping it clean, but actually using water to wash it clean. So that's why they have in a lot of chassidish shuls, they have like these sprays, water sprays that they have there for this purpose, and that's why it's there.
Bidets.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Okay. Bidets?
Yeah, bidet.
For women.
For women.
It's not-
Yeah, but for men,
So you can't take
It's not the spray.
A person can just open the sink and wet the toilet paper also. It's not a big deal. It doesn't have to be this whole, fancy schmancy thing. You just simply be wetting the toilet paper. But this is, this chassidus for cleanliness of prayer and davening, that in addition to doing what we said, the minimum requirement of making sure that there's no excrement left on the cleaning paper, but in addition to actually use water to clean. This is all regarding a bowel movement. Regarding urinating, it's a little bit different. Urine is more lenient than excrement. Urine is not an instrument of Torah to daven and learn by. It's only d'Rabbanan. That's why also b'diavad, if a person happened to have daven near urine, he's yaitse as opposed to excrement where he's not yaitse, because excrement is min Torah while urine is only rabbinical. So it's as follows. The way it's written is as follows: that if a person, when a person urinated, as some drops fell on his pants or shoes, he's required to immediately clean it off before going out into the public, for the same exact reason we read earlier that the Mechaber says you can't urinate in a flat, solid area. Again, because of this suspicion. I'll read you the translated words of the Alte Rebbe on this. He says, otherwise it appears that he is impotent and therefore he cannot urinate properly. This causes people to rumor that his children are not really his. Yeah. It's weird. I don't know why so many people are talking about other people's children, but it was, anyways, this is something I wanted to negate completely. They want to give another piece of bait to the gossipers.
Where is it from the Gemara, or what did they?
I believe it's from the Gemara, but I didn't cite that down here. So I believe it is, but I didn't cite it over here, so I can't tell you for
It
certain.
must have a source.
It definitely has a source.
Yeah, the reason for that. It's not just.
Okay. Regarding davening, let's say, so first of all, what I'm saying is that you're never allowed to even come out into public with having drops of urine because of this rumor issue, gossip issue. Forget about davening and prayer. Even if you don't want to daven, you're not allowed to go into public. Now, what happens if a person got some urine on his clothing? This can happen. If a person got some urine on his clothing or even his undergarments, his underclothing, is it more to daven or learn, with that on, or does the person have to actually change himself? And what happens if this happens in shul? You live a half hour away. By the time you come back, there is no more davening. You might as well just stay home and daven at home. So how does this work? So the answer is while regarding excrement, there's nothing to do. It's either get rid of the clothing, and if you can't, then go home. You cannot daven until you go. In my lesson. Regarding urine, it's as follows. If a person, I'll tell you writes like this, and this is from chapter 77, supplement. If one got urine on his clothing, then if the urine is not damp to the point that if you would remember, we learned this in Shabbos, the finger test. If you touch it with one finger, the wet area, it's not wet enough to wet another finger. You won't feel moisture on the second finger, then it's not considered really wet. It's absorbed, and it's not a problem. So it's only if it was really like soaked in one area. If there's an area that's soaked, so that's when we would have a problem. It would be forbidden to daven or learn with that on the person. But the good news is it's very simple to rectify, and that is through wetting your hands with some water and putting some water on it. That's it. By adding some water to the urine, it nullifies the halachic problem of the urine, and that's what can be done. So a person just puts some water in the area, and then that allows them to be able to daven and learn with it on them, so they don't have to change clothing. Now, what do you do on Shabbos?
What about the gossip that people?
This we're talking about in the inner clothing or on the outer clothing, and their issue was, you're asking a good question. It seems like their issue was more spots, like actual drops, like raindrops on the shoes or the clothing. But absorbed drops, it seems it didn't yet make the criteria for the gossipers. That's what it seems like. But they didn't go that far. But definitely actual drops, that's what we're worried about. But this is more pertinent to underclothing, which is obviously nobody sees, but you know if you got wet, so you would have to add some water to it. Now, what do you do on Shabbos? On Shabbos, we have an Isser Deraisa, Klisa, Melabin, to launder. So what do you do in this situation? So if you have on Shabbos, that's it, you have to go home. No, says the Alte Rebbe, you still have a way out. Instead of pouring water with your hand on it, simply wash your hands and conveniently dry them in that area. So if you conveniently dry your hands in that area from the water, then you're not doing it as a way of laundering, but it's a way of drying, just like you dry your hands on a towel, and then that takes care of, and then afterwards, I guess you should wash your hands again for cleanliness purposes, but it will take care of nullifying the issue with the urine. Furthermore, the truth is that even by urine, if the garment is covered by another clothing, it's also okay. So to clarify everything before I say the last point on this is that min hadin, the only time urine on the clothing is a problem is if it did not have water added to it and it's wet enough to make something else wet and it's not covered by other clothing. So like the pants, but if it's undergarments that are covered by pants, then it's not a problem, even if it's very wet, as we said before. Nonetheless, as the Alte here concludes, that pious Yidden were very careful not to daven with clothing that have any urine on them, even if it passes all of the allowances that we just mentioned. So they would go ahead and switch. They wouldn't daven with any urine on their clothing. Okay, we're now going to move on. Any questions on the subject? Okay, we're now going to move on.
When the talus touches, there's a wet.
Right. Well, talus, or let's say kapata, those are external garments, so then you would have to do the water trick. You would have to wash your hands and then dry them conveniently on there, but there's no issue. Okay, so regarding the urinating regulations applicable to men, we mentioned before. So the general, we read this before in the Mechaber, was a few seifim in the end regarding different areas of the Aver that a man is restricted from touching. And the reason is because of the tremendous prohibition involved in spilling seed in vain and Zera Levatala. And so this is an interesting topic we can discuss a few matters before we enter into the actual halacha here, and that is that while the discussion of Zera Levatala, of spilling seed in vain, masturbation, is really something that is a taboo subject and not discussed, especially in religious circles, and in fact there's good reason for that, is in order to not prod people into thinking about it. Sometimes the best way to stay away from something is to not even to talk about staying away from it. Yeah, I'm talking about. So the Rebbe actually says in today's generation, it's unfortunate, but we can't take that approach anymore because everything's so open and everyone's so knowledgeable and the preachers is so strong that people have to be educated and it has to be talked about. In Ger Chassidus, they have anyone in Ger knows this. This is the inner stuff in the yeshivas that they get. They have a whole project there. They have an older student in charge of guiding the younger students, and they're in charge of what they call it the kedusha of the teenagehood. So in any event, so this is something that in halacha is taken very, very seriously. But one of the things that is taught, even though the direct subject of Zer L'Batal is not so much touched upon, but all those, guard railings like this one is taught from a very young age. We teach our sons, you're not allowed to touch this area, you're not allowed to put your hand there, and and you can be told, a tremendous issue can happen if a person does that, and that's how prevents them from chas v'shalom falling into the sin. The Alte Rebbe here uses the following wording regarding the severity of the Isser. He says the following: one must be very careful not to hold on to his aver from the beginning of the limb, up until the crown. Right? That's the same as the mechaber, the atara. While urinating is certainly not during other times. Doing so is considered as if one brought a flood to the world. This is the wording of the Alte Rebbe. It's considered as if he brought a flood to the world, as it can bring one towards, excitement, which can cause spilling of seed. Now, the reason why this is like bringing a flood to the world, the Alte Rebbe explains him into a comma, is because the mabul occurred because of the sin of Zer L'Batal. The mabul occurred due to the sin of Zer L'Batal. So therefore, it's written. This is from the Gemara, this idea. And therefore, it's brought down the severity of touching this area unnecessarily, because that can cause stimulation, is because even though all the person did was just touch, but since it has a chance of causing stimulation and spilling of seed, so it's already considered as if he's bringing a flood to the world. He's playing with fire or with a flood. It's explained in Kabbalah. The Alte Rebbe, we know, brings us in Tanya and Perek Zayin, and other places, and in Satshuva, that even though there's many different types of sexual sins discussed in Parshas Achrei Mos and in Even Ezer, in chapter 21, and other places, whether it be incestuous sins, or whether it be adultery sins, or whether it be other type of sins of this, there is, in a certain respect, Zer L'Batal is the worst of the worst. As in terms of the amount of klippus that it recreates, the amount of evil forces that it recreates, it's worse than any other sin. In other words, that while other Yisurim in the Torah, other, adultery or incest is obviously tremendous prohibition, in comparison to this sin, it creates a lot more evil forces. And what's explained in Kabbalah is the following, is that we all know that one of our big missions in this world is Avodas HaBirurim. We're all down here in that big treasure hunt to find the 288 lost sparks. Now, we know originally there were 288 lost sparks. They broke down to billions of small sparks. And then Adam came along and ate from the tree, him and his wife, and caused a whole bunch of new sparks to fall. So now we're doing all these extra, unnecessary treasure hunts for sparks that shouldn't have been lost. But they are, so this is what we're working on. Zer L'Batal, what it causes is that it causes neshamas of Kedusha to fall again into Klippa, and that recreates the treasure hunt, basically. That's what's explained in Kabbalah, that a person has to go through his life and have to refine them. And while as opposed to all other sexual sins don't do that because there's a female or a person involved, and therefore it prevents it from being just out in the wild, out in the open, into the air. And there's a lot of different things we do based on this worry, and that's why it is the custom in Chabad, as well as a lot of the Jewish world, to not allow the children, sons, daughters, granddaughters, grandsons, great-grandsons, etc., no descendants, are allowed to follow the casket, the body of the deceased, by a funeral. Even if you're not a kohen, nothing to do with kohen. The descendants don't follow the body of the deceased by a funeral. Meaning, a person passed away, a father passed away, he left sons, daughters, grandsons, granddaughters, great-grandsons. All of that line of children, of descendants, they're not allowed to go to the funeral, and they're not allowed to be by the kavura. They have to stay a distance away from the kavura. They have to be, our minhag, this is also the minhag of Yerushalayim, it's the minhag of many Hasidic groups, many Sephardim. Not the whole Jewish world, but a good portion of it, is that we, some don't go at all to anything, they just stay at home. That's minhag Yerushalayim. They just stay home. The descendants all stay home. They don't go to the funeral. They don't go to I'm gonna explain something. I'm just explaining what the minhag is. I'm just saying how far this goes as a precaution for this. And by Chabad, what we do is that we just go straight to the burial, and we wait from a distance from the burial. We don't participate at all in the burial. We wait until the mound is formed on top of the mace, and only then do we go over and say Kaddish. But we don't come near it until then because of this issue. What is the issue? It's explained in Kabbalah, it's from the Zohar, Rabbi Yaakov, and other sources, that by the funeral, all these souls of Zer Levatala want to join as well the funeral. They want to follow this person to his grave, the souls that he created. So by having, if his children and descendants come, then all the descendants come, even the ones that didn't make it into bodies, even those of Zer Levatala. While if no descendants come, then they are also banned from coming. No one's allowed to come, and them too. And this prevents any of these klippas from attaching to the body when he passes away. So it's a very, very severe thing. And, so when I was once telling this to somebody, I'm like, well, it's so crazy. How can I not go to my father's funeral? How can I say, listen, would your father have wanted you to follow this halacha that I'm telling you? He says, probably yes. I said, so what's the main thing by a funeral? You or your father? What's the main care? You want your father to have all these klippas with him now? Even by tzaddikim, there's no exception. Even by tzaddikim, the descendants don't follow. The descendants don't follow the tzaddikim, sons or daughters. By a mother, it's something else. I'll discuss that in a second. But by a male, that's definitely what we follow because of the chashash of the souls of Zer Levatala. That's how severe it is. We don't find it by anything else. And interestingly, from a halachic perspective, there is no actual Isser Zer Levatala by a woman. It's not like a man that has, sperm and has ability to procreate, from his sperm cells. By a woman, there is no such Isser of Zer Levatala, so therefore these halachas don't really apply. There's no such thing as touching, not touching when you're urinating, etc. However, based on Kabbalah, there is. Based on Kabbalah, the concept of Zer Levatala applies to a woman as well. And therefore, we find that the Chabad minhag is also by mothers. The descendants don't follow, not just by fathers. Also by mothers. That's the way the descendants don't follow because of this. Okay, so the halacha, how much time do we have left? I went way over time. Okay, we'll have to continue next week.
We started at 8:15.
Oh, okay, good. So I got
No, actually,
another 7 minutes. Okay. I'm not worried. Okay, so let's finish this halacha. So that regarding that, there was no additional halachic aspect recorded, just the simple ruling that a person is not allowed to touch from the only area permitted to be touched for urinating is the crown area of the aver. The Alte here adds that if a person uses a cloth, then it's mutter because it does a thick cloth because it doesn't stimulate. So if a person wants to have, use a towel to help him, then there's no restriction of where or where not he's allowed to hold on to.
I have a question. When it happens at night, unwillingly,
Nocturnal emission. Yeah.
does it create the same type of klipa?
Right.
Same thing?
Right. So usually it does. I mean, that's the usual status quo, and that's why we're very careful of certain things at night. Gemara Bracha says you can't sleep pratkin, you can't sleep on your back, you can't sleep on your front. A man, in order not to get stimulated, a person allowed to think about forbidden thoughts during the days. It can cause it to happen at night. We know the Kohen Gadol wasn't allowed to sleep, right? He had to stay up the whole night because of that. Get ready, he had to stay up the whole night if you get elected, right? Stay up the whole night. He was quite tired probably when he was doing his Avodah, but he was probably had so much adrenaline that he wasn't thinking about it. But because when you sleep, a person can come to have eternal emission. On the other hand, it's Dafka in Yuma, the Masechah, the Gemara in Yuma, that brings that if a nocturnal emission did happen to someone on the night of Yom Kippur, and the person lived the year, then it's a sign. It's a good sign. It's a sign of blessing and longevity of life. So it's kind of, there's a whole Sikh of the Rebbe on this. It's kind of very contradictory how something which is really, impure, how can that be a sign of anything good? And so there's a mimer of the Maggid of Mezrich, which I'm sure when this was printed, and I think it was first printed Tuf Kuf Nun Gimel in 1783, I'm sure the Hasidic movement got a ton of slack for this one because this sounded like a direct replica of the philosophies of Shabtai. not to compare Chas v'Shalom, Havdalah from Dallas, but I'm just saying from a historical perspective, I'm sure this got them into a lot of trouble. The Maggid writes over there that there's certain types of nocturnal emissions which actually are positive and they are a good thing. It's like Hashem, using the same Gemara in Yuma, that Hashem is satiating the tzaddik to have good feeling. And he explains it there in length. He explains there's a difference if it comes due to immoral thoughts or if it comes on its own. I don't remember the details of the Torah of the mind, but there's a whole Torah that he has on this idea. So in answer to your question, by most normal people, it is definitely creating klipos, and that's why you have to go to mikvah. But by other people, by tzaddikim, it's of a different status. On the subject, I'll just mention, I was speaking to Rabbi Eli Lando just yesterday about something else, and he mentioned to me a story that he said the following. I was trying to clarify from him how often was a custom of Lubavitch to go to mikveh in the morning. Was it every day? So he said that originally in Lubavitch, it seems like it was only on Mondays and Thursdays that they would go to mikveh. And he said that he brought a story that with Rav Zislin, who was the head mashpia of Temchet Tmimim in, I forgot the name of the Russian city. He told me the name of the city, I don't remember the name right now. That he asked the Rebbe Rashab, how should we direct the students regarding mikveh going? And the Rebbe Rashab said Mondays and Thursdays. They should go on Mondays and Thursdays. And so Rav Zislin replied, and also whenever they need to, referring to nocturnal emission. Balkari, and the Rebbe Rashab looked back at him very sharply and said they should never need to. That's what he said.
But what's the effect of the mikveh on the klipot that has been created? You said he has to go to mikveh because of that.
Oh, there's an impurity on the person. Yeah.
Purity on the person.
Yeah.
Itself.
Yeah. But okay, it could be there's impurity without having a lot of klipos. I don't know. I haven't seen. I haven't researched and I haven't seen that I'm aware of on those details. But the one thing's for sure, based on the Gemara, that obviously is that there's a nocturnal emission in someone who does it b'mezid chas v'shalom. Regarding, even though we said over here in this halacha that it is mutter to hold on to the crown area for the sake of urinating, that's only by urinating, but outside of urination, it's never permitted to touch the area at all. In fact, as brought in Even Ezer, in the Mechaber, a person's not allowed to put his hand below his belt, ever stop for no reason, only if it's for the purpose of intimacy or to the purpose of, as I said before, going to the bathroom, for urinating, holding on to the crown. As we said before, the testes is permitted to be held onto in order to help with urination. For other purposes, it is forbidden. Regarding one who's married, so this is what I want to clarify. So we said a halach in the Mechaber that if you're married, it's not a problem. Well, Alte qualifies this in a few different scenarios. He says the following: it's only referring to someone who's married that his wife is tahar and in the same city, so she's available. So there's not such a worry as, he can just be intimate and we don't have to worry about the Zer Vatala. However, if all those three conditions weren't fulfilled, either he's not married or he's married, his wife is not pure, or his wife is pure but she's not around, then it would still be forbidden for it to be done, and the allowance is only by the actual crown. Again, married, pure, in the same area, there's no restriction. He can hold wherever he wants. Even with this, as the Mechaber concluded, it's proper to be stringent to avoid holding on even to the crown, whoever is able to arrange it that way. And that's how basically Chassidish, Midas Chassidus, how Chassidim educate their children, is try not to hold on at all in order not to have any stimulation of the area at all. Regarding the Berhetiv deals with the following question. What about cleaning yourself in a bath or a shower? A person can't touch the area, it's going to, it's not very hygienic. So he says, Berhetiv writes, Berhetiv lived in the 1700s, one of the primary commentators on the Shulchan Aruch, the 1600s. And he writes that in a shower, a person is allowed to casually cleanse himself in the area with, let's say, soap or a sponge without looking. So he does it very quickly and he doesn't look at the area while he's doing so. Those are the conditions. You don't look, and it's being done quickly. A question that was dealt with in a number of today's Poskim is regarding medical checkups. It's common, as far as I know, I think it's universal, but I could be wrong. In an annual medical checkup of the physique of a person's body, they have a checkup also on the testes. And the question is, can you allow the doctor to do that to you? Because there's no evident illness. This is just routine. So some Poskim actually write that it's forbidden, and you have to protest and tell the doctor not to do so. In other words, the same one, but a person can come and say, well, if there's something wrong, so do you know how many billions of things could be wrong in the body? His checkup is like checking about 5 of them, of the how many billion. So he doesn't check, he doesn't check. Okay. If there's a reason to suspect, you do it. This is in the army, this came up, because even the Bnei Yeshivas who would get a tour, an exemption from the army, they would still have to have a medical checkup. And the doctor would do this, and this was very uncomfortable, and this is how the Shiloh really came up. And they said that they arranged for the army doctors not to do this. We'll conclude with one last question. Is it permitted for one to look at his erva area, or in the mikvah, at someone else's erva area? And the Poskim write that one may not look at one's erva, and certainly not at the erva of another person. This is written in Yefei L'Lev of Chaim Falaji, based on Sefer Charedim and other Sfarim. And the reason obviously is for this Isser is in order so it doesn't stimulate any forbidden thoughts. So next week, what we have left to discuss is delaying bathroom needs. And pretty much that closes it up, because the rest of the subject we're going to save for other Simanim when we get up to.
This is where Port Noise complaint.
What's that?
Phil Cross, Port Noise complaint. I think that was what it's called. Port Noise complaint, Phil Cross. This was your mother's and all this stuff.
I have 2 questions for you. You avoid the crowd.